The country let the victims' families down. Jason Chaffetz ripping the Benghazi verdict as the alleged mastermind of that attack is cleared of murder charges, taking the death penalty off the table.
The former Utah congressman joins us now live. Thank you for being here with us.
Good morning. Fired up, ready to go.
Well, fired up, right? And why? I mean, death penalty off the table. What's your reaction?
Well, look, I called Charles Woods, you know, the father of one of the victims here. I also talked to Chris Peranto, who was one of the guys who actually saved a lot of lives by fighting back that night. And I just said, you know, I'm so sorry that your country let you down. I mean, and it started with Susan Rice, who went before the world and said that there was a YouTube video. And from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama to Leon Panetta, they all perpetuated this lie. And that slowed us down because the Libyans knew we were lying. And so they didn't let the FBI into look at the crime scene where this terrorist attack happened for 18 days.
That's a long time.
And the consequence is then when you go to court years later to try to prosecute somebody, you don't have the evidence that you need in order to prosecute.
Those hours after are crucial.
And you're held, and it's held in this U.S. courtroom, which has our very rigid standards for conviction. Was this wrong to be put here in the first place? Should this have been a military tribunal, or however they would do it?
Two thoughts. One is this was not the mastermind. This is a low-level, mid-level person at best.
Right.
I do think a bullet to the head would probably be better justice, to be candid. I mean, based on what he did. But at the same time, it wasn't the mastermind. The mastermind's still out there, and the intelligence community knows exactly who that person is. But when you have an enemy combatant, that's exactly what Gitmo was built for, is to take somebody off the battlefield outside the country, and don't bring him to a D.C. courtroom, but bring him down to Guantanamo Bay and go through the military tribunal process.
Right.
So what do we learn from this going forward, not to do this again, not to make this mistake again?
There's still, well, and that's why you dived so deep. That's why we did so many hearings and looked so hard at it, so that it never, ever happens again. And I think the core question is, when we have Americans under attack on sovereign U.S. territory, the military has to be able to get there and extract those people. And the reality is, in the Obama administration, not a single military asset outside of Libya was called into Benghazi. Not one. And that scares me, that if we don't learn that lesson, something like this could happen again.
Well, it's certainly frustrating for people that lost loved ones in this thing. And, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to get the terrorism charges. He still could get life. I mean, it's looking at 10 years to life, but we'll see.
But is that enough for some people?
I mean, exactly. No, it's frustrating.
Yeah, and that's why I think the people who actually were there and were killed and their families, that's why I think the country let them down. And it started with some really bad decisions by Hillary Clinton and others.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to tax reform here. The big talker this week, if the president could just stay on subject with this matter, because this is going to be the big accomplishment if he can get it done. You've got a number of people that are now in. Moran Murkowski looks like she's in, which was a tricky one. Corker with his trigger that he wants to, put in place if we don't see that economic growth. It's going to either bring up taxes or cut spending. So a lot of big names in this process are starting to fall and move the president's way. We've still got Flake and McCain, I think, are going to be the two tough ones, the two Arizona senators. How do you see this going?
I think ultimately Jeff Flake will end up voting for this. He is a fiscal conservative. I don't think you can necessarily get John McCain there, because I do think, based on the past, he voted against the Bush tax cuts. I think he likes taxes high, and he likes military spending high. And so I don't know that you ever get him, but I do think you can get all the other ones. But they're going to start what's called Vote-A-Rama, where members can offer amendments, and they vote pretty much every 10 minutes and can do that for a day or two, and that's coming up right around the corner.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is in the upcoming hours, what type of tweaks, changes do you think we're going to see in this?
There are some things that could blow this up. There's some things that can make some very tough amendments, and you'll watch. The Democrats will offer a lot of amendments that won't be germane, and then they'll blame Republicans. Oh, you won't even consider this, yet the Senate rules won't allow it to be continued. They could have solved all this with one vote by bringing up the House bill, but of course that would be too easy, and Republicans want to make cutting taxes complicated.
Of course. They want to bring business back to America. They want to bring corporations back to America and major jobs back to America. Cutting it down to 20%, the corporate tax rate, is a way to do that. But a lot of people, there are a couple of these senators that have a big problem with small businesses not getting the same kind of fair deal. Tell us about how much of a break small business will get with this current plan as it is versus corporations?
Well, Ron Johnson, I think, does bring up some good points, and he will offer an amendment that I think will make a tweak, and there are a lot of people that believe that that would actually move it in the right direction. You have Senator Mike Lee and Senator Rubio that took on the receiving end of a very scathing editorial this morning from the Wall Street Journal that would actually move up the corporate tax from 20% to 22% in order to do refundable tax credits for families. And there's some, like the Wall Street Journal, that don't think that's good, that if you don't pay taxes, why should you get paid, is essentially what happens with the refundable tax credit.
Before we let you go, funding the government, how does this play out?
That's going to be more difficult. It's the sleeper issue because on December 8th is when the funding runs out. I think, based on talk with my colleagues, we'll talk with my colleagues, there's two big things that are going to happen next week. A $30 billion, roughly, supplemental. Remember, we have to do hurricane relief. They still are suffering down there. That has to get in place, and then they'll extend, I think, until the middle of January, a continuing resolution. But if you want to get Republican priorities in place, you have to actually pass a full budget. And even though the House passed its 12 appropriation bills over to the Senate months ago, the Senate hasn't done anything with that. And you have to fund the government. We don't need a government shutdown right in the middle of what's going on, as you and I were talking about in North Korea and other places. But I think they'll do a short-term continuing resolution. It's a terrible way to run the government.
No kidding. I mean, it's just ridiculous. All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Thank you.